Welcome to this episode of Criminology Chats. I'm JR.
And I am Grace Ferrell.
All right. Today's case is a horrific one. An ex-boyfriend who kills his ex-girlfriend's family and a friend living on the property.
Yeah, and this wasn't just a random act of violence. The warning signs were very clearly there, and it was over again and again.
Exactly. You know, what drives someone to commit something like this, Grace? Who knows, right? What warning signs were missed? I think there was some there, in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And how did a protective order meant to keep someone safe fail so completely? And I just got to comment, these protective orders, people just don't listen to them because there's no big penalty for violating one. That's the problem, I think.
And I think that's kind of the scary part too, and that's the part that really sticks in the case we'll be talking about because it didn't just come out of nowhere. And in this episode, just a disclaimer, it contains explicit content such as gun violence, distressing audio, and descriptions of extreme violence. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute legal, medical, or psychological advice. Our sources for this episode are official police records and an open source article published in April of 2025 by medium.com Crime Desk.
And the relationship between Jessica and Joseph Castorena was tumultuous. Say that word for me, Grace.
Tumultuous?
Yeah, from the beginning.
That's putting it very lightly.
Well, they never married. They shared 2 children and were in an on-again, off-again relationship for about 2 years before the murders.
Which we can often see in situations like this. That's usually how it goes. It's not constant chaos, but it's definitely a continuous cycle. I just want to also add, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know in domestic violence cases, the worst kind of comes when somebody tries to leave.
Yes, that's a lot. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about it a little bit right now. We called it, in old school, back in my day, we called it love bombing. And in the first couple of months, it's like love bombing. I mean, everything's so sweet, beautiful. They give you flowers, they open the door, they talk to you nice. And about that 6-month time, that's when things, if it's going to change, that's when it starts.
Yes.
Okay. And if it starts changing towards the negative, that's when you got to kick them to the curb, as I say. That's what
Exactly.
I call it. All right. What may have started with hope, promise, quickly deteriorated into a toxic cycle, or jealousy, control, and fear, as is often the case in an abusive relationship. The red flags appeared gradually. Joseph became increasingly possessive, monitoring Jessica's communications and movements. And that's one of the first signs. Whenever they start monitoring things and wanting to know where you're at, what you're doing all the time, that's never good.
Definitely that sense of control that he needed I would say, probably one of the biggest and probably the first warning signs that a lot of women would see.
He even created check this out, a fake Facebook account, not just one, but multiple, to test her loyalty.
Yeah, that's pretty extreme. That's very manipulative.
Yeah. I didn't have to worry about that back then whenever I was dating and got married to my wife because we didn't even have Facebook. We didn't even have computers. But anyway. He would lure her into conversations, arrange meetings with her, then reveal himself and use it to start arguments. This manipulative tactic demonstrated not only his intent to deceive, but his pathological need to test her loyalty and maintain psychological control. And that's the key. That's a pathological problem right there, and to maintain that psychological control over her. The couple's conflicts became so severe that Child Protective Services had to become involved, and for the welfare of the children, I think they ended up eventually taking them and putting them away with some other family members. And local law enforcement as well was well acquainted with this household, having responded to numerous domestic disturbances over the 2 years.
Yeah, I think that's also the hardest part. The police knew this was happening. It wasn't hidden, so people knew that it's wrong and this was happening to this woman.
Exactly.
And the escalation part of it, just 1 week before the killings on October 23rd of 2022, Jessica reported to the police department that Joseph Castorena, her ex-boyfriend, came to her place of employment asking her to go to lunch with him. She obviously did not want to go and eat with him, but when she had left her workplace on her lunch break, he was there waiting for her in the parking lot.
Broad daylight, that's terrifying. You know what I'm saying? I can imagine how terrified she was at that point in time seeing him.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of women walking out at night alone is scary, but for somebody to do that in broad daylight, there's something going on up in his head. So That's terrifying. He then forced her to go to lunch with him and then refused to let her leave. He took her to his house where he wouldn't let her get out of his vehicle. Jessica was forced to stay inside Joseph's vehicle all night. During the night, Jessica reported that Joseph had continually pointed a small black handgun at her and told her that if she didn't listen to him, he would kill her and then kill himself. She later reported that she tried to leave the vehicle, but that Joseph had grabbed a tire iron and had hit her driver's side window, causing it to shatter, causing small cuts on both of her arms. And this frightening escalation had prompted Jessica and her father, Jesus Serrano, to seek and obtain a protective order against Joseph, which is a legal step that would tragically prove insufficient for her and her family.
Even though it's a legal maneuver that can be done and should be done, it probably was something that just made him more angry
Yes,
and
exactly.
and maybe was the trigger that started him down this path,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Just one day before the murders, Child Protective Services had removed the children that they shared together from the home. The action was meant to protect the innocent, and that may have inadvertently served as a final trigger along with that protective order. He had really nothing left to lose, and that's probably in his mind, he had nothing left to lose. If he couldn't have her or the children, then, like I said, and he's losing all that power over them, then that just put him out of control. And the backdrop to this tragedy reveals a critical truth about domestic violence. It rarely begins with physical assault, but emerging patterns of controlling behavior that gradually intensify. By the time physical violence occurs, psychological control is often already firmly established, and the Serrano family had recognized the danger and taken legal steps to protect themselves, but the system designed to shield them would fail them in the most devastating way possible.
So, looking at the night of the murders, as Halloween had approached in 2022, the Serrano home should have been filled with holiday preparations and family warmth, but instead, in the early hours of October 30th, it would become a hunting ground for a man consumed by rage and revenge. And just after 2 a.m., Jessica Serrano returned home from a family gathering to find something immediately unsettling in her home. Joseph Castorena had put his jacket, his jeans, and his keys in her bedroom closet.
I don't know how she felt, but I know that being that he was already inside that house, that was just
Yeah, I
devastating.
can't yeah, my heart would
Yeah,
drop. I
yeah.
wouldn't know what to do. Despite the protective order that Jessica had legally attained, barring him from her property, Joseph had somehow entered the home while the family was away and had been lying in wait for their return. Jessica recognized the imminent danger because of him, and she immediately called 911.
And we'll listen to some of the 911 call.
He's not supposed to be here around me with this house. And I just found his jacket here, his jeans, and his keys here.
Okay.
In my closet, hiding.
Okay.
And I believe he's in the house hiding somewhere.
Do you have cameras around your house?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Did you see anything on the cameras?
I don't, not at the moment I haven't, because my sister's the one that has the cameras, but I told her to check, so she wouldn't do that now.
All right. I do have that in here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put them out there. If you do end up seeing him on camera and anything else, just give us a call back, but I have it in, okay? What's going on, Jessica?
Oh my God! There's shots fired at my house!
Okay, what's going on?
I don't know, I can't lost myself in the restroom.
Okay.
Help now!
Stay on the phone with me.
Help now!
Stay on the phone with me.
did you do this to me, Jessica? I don't have no bullets.
No, Joseph, please! No!
What do you want to do? What do you want me to do? I can't, Jessica. What you was doing?
No!
Then come out and talk to me. Come on, talk to me. Now!
No! 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 Joseph, please! No! No! Joseph! Joseph! Please!
No, Jessica.
No! Joseph! No! Ah! No! Joseph!
So while Jessica spoke with the dispatcher, Jessica's family members were moving through other parts of the house, very unaware of the danger that would be lurking in the shadows for them. Then, as heard on the 911 call, the unthinkable happened. The sound of gunfire suddenly erupted within the home, and Jessica cried out to the dispatcher. Her voice was paralyzed with terror. She ended up locking herself in a bathroom. She was very desperate to escape the killer, Joseph, who was methodically moving throughout her home. And the first victim was likely Ken Green, which was Jessica's brother-in-law. And he was ambushed near the basement stairs with a single gunshot wound.
Never really had a chance, you know.
Yeah, unfortunately. And as the sound of the first shot echoed through the house, other family members became aware of the danger, but it was already too late for many of them. Joseph had ended up killing Jessica's father, Jesus, her twin sister, Maria, and family member Rodolfo Perez, another victim of Joseph's indiscriminate rage.
Yeah, entire lives erased in minutes. How unfortunate. Meanwhile, Jessica was trapped in the bathroom and on the phone with emergency services. She could hear the horror unfolding throughout her home, but was powerless to stop it. As the dispatcher tried to keep her calm and quiet, the nightmare continued to unfold. Suddenly, her bathroom door was kicked open. In what can only be described as a remarkable presence of mind amid unimaginable terror, Jessica managed to grab Joseph and throw him into the bathtub.
Yeah, it's a very powerful move for her, so good for her in doing that.
The split-second action created just enough time for her to bolt from the bathroom and flee the house with Joseph in pursuit. She ran first into the backyard, then back through the house and into the street where she attempted to flag down a passing car. The driver, not comprehending maybe the situation or afraid themselves, just drove past. Joseph, seeming to realize that help would soon arrive, turned and ran in the opposite direction. Soon after that, a member of the Aurora Police Department arrived on the scene just as Jessica ran into the street. Jessica was hysterical, shouting that he shot her entire family, pointing in the direction that Joseph ran from the house. Within moments, law enforcement swarmed the property, but the scene that awaited them inside was a picture of horror, and that even veteran officers would find difficult to process.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it was. That night, 4 innocent lives had been extinguished in minutes by a singular man who had decided that if he couldn't control his ex-girlfriend and their children together, he would just destroy everything that she loved and everything that she had. And in the aftermath, their 2 young children, believed to be Maria's kids, were found unharmed physically, but they're going to forever be scarred by the violence that had ultimately torn their family apart. And as first responders secured the bloody crime scene inside the Serrano home, the primary focus was immediately shifted to locating to where's Joseph now. And Jessica repeated why, as officers tried to console her outside of her home. And she was telling them, I told you guys to hurry up. You guys won't listen to me. Her words reflected the frustration of a woman who had tried to use the criminal justice system to protect herself from something that ended up in horror. And inside the home, officers methodically documented the scene. The murder weapon, a 9mm Kimber handgun, was recovered along with 9 shell casings. Later forensic analysis would confirm Joseph's fingerprints on that weapon. And investigators also discovered that the shell casings matched those found months earlier in a stolen vehicle, and the gun itself appeared to have been stolen at some point, having originally been purchased by a man in Iowa in 2016.
This suggested that Joseph had access to illegal firearms before the murders. So he didn't go somewhere and buy it and go through the legal process. He got it in some illegal manner, right? Now the focus shifts to finding Joseph. It's the manhunt is on. He fled barefoot and was still armed.
Extremely dangerous.
Police quickly established a perimeter around the neighborhood, hoping to contain Joseph before he could escape. They found his vehicle parked a street between the Serrano home and his parents. His cell phone was pinging around a 900-meter radius of the crime scene, indicating he might still be nearby. Eventually, this phone was discovered in the backyard of the Serrano home, apparently dropped or discarded during his escape. Evidence suggested that after attacking Jessica in the bathroom, Joseph returned through the house, hopped over the rear fence of the property, and fled. Police K-9 units were deployed throughout the neighborhood, and officers went door to door as dawn broke. They even put up drones to deploy them to search for him, but Joseph was gone.
Investigators believed he had help escaping because Joseph was on foot in freezing temperatures with no shoes and without being detected. The conclusion was inescapable. He must have had an accomplice. So focus shifted to Joseph's brothers. While his older brother did end up having an alibi for the night of the murders, Joseph's younger brother, Juan, was avoiding contact with the police, which that seems very guilty in my eyes. Eventually, he was brought in for questioning, and he admitted to giving Joseph a ride away from the crime scene. Juan had took Joseph first to Denver, where he attempted to pass his brother off as a cousin named Carlos Flores. And at that time, Juan was arrested and charged with an accessory after the fact to 4 murders. So could he be heading to Texas to find his children, or to Mexico where he had family and had visited the previous years for his grandfather's funeral? Following this lead, the FBI and local law enforcement on the workplace of the real Carlos Flores, after receiving a tip that he had been talking about how his quote-unquote cousin had killed 4 people. So when arrested, Flores told investigators that he had attempted to pass Joseph off to other family members, but they wanted nothing to do with him.
I don't blame him. He just, yeah, I'd say, hey, look, I'm sorry, man. Sorry. Don't come call in here.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I mean, he had finally dropped Joseph off near a school in the middle of the night, providing him with blankets and whatever cash he had available on him.
Yeah, I'm sure that Flores was also charged as an accessory after the fact. Come on, you know.
Yes, he was.
After a month and a half, the trail went cold. Then collaboration between the FBI, Mexican Immigration Services, and federal police began yielding results. Rumors placed Joseph in central northern Mexico, where he had tried to contact extended family. However, according to reports, Joseph had alienated family members during his grandfather's funeral the previous year and found no safe harbor among his Mexican relatives. Thank God he alienated them. But also, burning bridges with family. This is a prime example of why you shouldn't.
Yep.
Who may have even alerted local authorities to his presence.
Yeah, karma's a bitch, isn't it?
It sure is. Yep. Forced to move further south into a more rural area, the 5'4", slightly built man with the distinctive lion's head tattoo on his neck stood out. Local police spotted and arrested him on December 10, 2022. The international manhunt had ended, but the journey toward justice was now just beginning.
Yeah. So during the trial and following Joseph Castorena's capture, the legal process to return him to the United States began almost immediately. The extradition process would move in stages, first bringing him to Phoenix, Arizona, where he would be held by the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office until he could be transferred to Colorado to face charges. So while still in custody in Phoenix, investigators from the Aurora, Colorado Police Department flew down to interview Joseph, hoping to get his recollection and account of the events.
You're Joseph? Yeah, what's the last name? Castro. Your birthday? May 24th, 2001. So I'm Detective Wilson. This is Detective Graw. We're detectives from Aurora. PD, obviously, here to talk to you about some events that happened in Aurora. So where did you come from today? Do you know?
That was Jalisco, Guanajuato.
Okay, that's where you flew out of?
Yeah.
Okay, and then where'd you go from there?
Here.
You guys been traveling all day.
Yeah. Are you tired?
Yeah.
So we traveled too. So obviously we came from Aurora because obviously we want to get some information from you. I know it's been a long day, probably for you as it is us. Are you cool with talking to us?
I am. But I feel more comfortable with the attorney, so.
Okay.
I haven't been myself. Ladies.
Can I give you my card, and
Yeah.
if and when you get an attorney, then give me a call?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I wanna get one or just get one appointed. Probably get one appointed one really quickly, so I can probably guys quicker, so.
Well, I guess we were told that you were talking to the Mexican authorities.
Not really. Not really, no. They're a little more brutal, so.
Well, you're shaking like a leaf here.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna beat you up here.
Oh, no, I know. I just a little shooken up. I just woke up. Was passed out of there. And I haven't slept. So honestly, just 2 hours sleep. I haven't slept since say Saturday that I woke up in the morning and slept at all. So yeah, the Mexican police did rough me up a little bit. So
They're not very nice. It's an understatement. Alright, well, like I said, nobody's gonna beat you up here, so if you don't wanna talk, that's kind of where we're at.
Alright. You'll have your attorney give me a call, okay?
okay.
During the interview, Joseph appeared visibly shaken, repeatedly expressing that he would feel more comfortable speaking with an attorney present. He mentioned that the Mexican police were not nice and treated him roughly, and they didn't allow him to sleep. And the Aurora police officers assured him that wouldn't happen in U.S. custody, which I don't know if it did or not, but hopefully
Yeah,
not.
hopefully not. But kudos on the Mexican police,
Yeah,
you
I
because
agree.
they knew he killed 4 people. Come on. All right. But no, we don't want to infringe on his legal rights. He is innocent until proven guilty. So
Yes.
the legal proceedings move slowly, as often is the case with a complex murder like this and a complex murder trial involving an actual, international capture as well. Prosecutors meticulously built their case, gathering evidence from the crime scene, witness testimonies, and the digital trail left by Joseph and his accomplices. The 9mm Kimber handgun, which is a pistol, semi-automatic, at the crime scene with Joseph's fingerprints would become a key piece of evidence, along with the matching shell casings linking him to the crime. Now let's get this straight. He did the murders, and then he left the gun that he used there. Didn't he leave it? Did he leave it there? I don't know. I don't know if he
It
found it
sounded
there.
it sounded like he had multiple weapons on him because
Right.
they found it at the house, but then he was also armed when he left.
Right.
So
So I don't know if they found it on him or he left his house or they found it somewhere, obviously, and linked it to him. Anyway, but in September 2024, Joseph stood trial.
yeah, and it seems like the evidence was very overwhelming for
Yes, it
his
was.
trial.
The evidence was so overwhelming. His fingerprints with the murder weapon, shell casings matching those from a previous incident linked him. Testimony from Jessica's eyewitness account of the horror she had experienced that night. He was convicted on all accounts and sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences. He will never walk free again.
So for Jessica, who had not only lost her father, but she lost her twin sister, her brother-in-law, and a family friend in this attack, the long wait for justice must have seemed interminable. While the verdict brought a measure of legal closure for her, the protracted process highlighted significant issues within the legal system's approach to domestic violence cases. Observers questioned how a man with Joseph's history of threats and violence had remained free to commit such a heinous crime, even after a protective order had been issued against him. This case stands as a chilling reminder of how domestic violence can escalate to the ultimate tragedy when intervention comes too late. 4 lives, they were cut short in a rampage that lasted mere minutes, but left wounds that will never fully heal for the survivors.
Yeah, while Joseph 4 consecutive life sentences will ensure he will never walk again free, his capture and conviction cannot restore what was lost that night. And I can just say that he was a young man too, I think 20, 21 years old. And can you imagine for the rest of his life, he will be incarcerated. He will die in prison having ruined his life at such a young age. And I know that we shouldn't highlight that fact that as much as the 4 victims, but still, that's a young man who also tragic end to his life in essence. Never be free again. Won't see his children probably, because who's going to bring them to see him?
Right.
And they probably won't want to see him, right? The children then will grow up, without parents, especially her sister's children we're talking about, will grow up, without parents, because both were killed that night. A mother will forever mourn her daughter that she lost that night and her husband that she lost. And the community will continue to question how much violence could happen despite the legal safeguards in place. How could all this have happened, And the most important legacy of this tragedy would be the tough questions it forces us to ask about how our society responds to domestic violence. And there's one thing that I wanted to say before you start to wrap things up is I know that police can get very busy, and sometimes when you have these domestic disturbances, sometimes they're not seen as a high priority because there are a lot of other things going on. But in this case, I think that the fact that he had a gun on her when she took her and wouldn't let her go back to work after taking her away for lunch and kidnapping her for 24 hours at gunpoint, that should have raised the level of finding him to the point where I think I'm not going to say that this could have been completely stopped, but I wish they had found him before October 30th, because they also saw footage of him being there the day before, right after that order was issued. That same night he was there, and they saw him on camera at their house.
From just my point of view, ultimately it's up to the judge to decide what to do. And I think looking at aggravating factors such as Joseph having a past history of violence in general, it should have been taken more seriously. And it could have been prevented, it could have not been prevented, but I think also looking at his past history, criminal history, something probably could have been done.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate everybody listening. I appreciate you being here and doing this with me. I hope our listeners will keep listening. Don't forget, hit us up on our YouTube channel with comments on our Podbean account. Please, we will respond. Give us some cases to look at. We want your input. We need your input, please. Okay? Isn't that right, Grace?
Yes.
All right.
Get all the students out there.
Yeah. All right.
Criminology Chats is brought to you by the Chicago School. For more information about the institution, please visit www.thechicagoschool.edu. That's www.thechicagoschool.edu. I would like to extend my gratitude to the students who always participate in these episodes. We want to hear from our listeners, so please email us at criminologychatspodcast@gmail.com. That's CRIMINOLOGYCSPODCAST@gmail.com. And also, please check out our YouTube channel at https://www.youtube.com/@Criminology Chats Podcast. This podcast is produced and edited by A.M. Peters with additional post-production services provided by Audio Photo Synthesis. I'm J.R. Rainbolt, and I eagerly anticipate you listening to our next episode. Be safe out there.
The views and perspectives shared in these recordings are intended solely for informational purposes and do not reflect the official stance or policies of the speakers of the Chicago School. Any commercial products and manufacturers mentioned are included for informational reasons only and do not imply endorsement or approval by the speakers of the Chicago School.